Hello, everyone. This is Liz, and welcome to Monday. I hope everyone is doing well. Definitely just rained outside. I'm here. It's Director Day, and we're here to talk about a personal favorite of mine who is actually, I was going to cover him last week, but Ennio Morricone, I hope I'm saying that name right, passed away, so I definitely thought it was best to cover him and eulogize him, considering his vast contribution to cinema. Not that this guy hasn't made contributions. The guy I'm talking about is Italian director Lucio Fulci. Most well known for horror, but he actually had a fairly diverse career and unfortunately a sad end. He had a career or a personal life marked by tragedy. So let's just start with the basics. He was born June 17th, in 1927. His mother, who pretty much raised him alone, she eloped with the father. He left her, so she raised him by herself. She was a part of a politically involved anti-fascist family, so that's kind of cool. Definitely had grew up fairly involved and educated. Loved music, loved film. Oddly enough, loved sailing. I wouldn't guess that from him, but you never know. He also liked soccer, but I think everyone in Europe likes soccer. He went to the Naval College in Venice and, oddly enough, went into medicine, but dropped out thinking, get this, there's more money to be made in filmmaking. Uh, I thought about going into film at some point. I don't ever think medicine makes less money than filmmaking entered my mind. Maybe it was only true at this weird point in time. So he got started in the 50s making with film. He went to the Centro Sperimentale School. He worked as an assistant director. He directed documentaries. He also worked for an art critic as a bit. And this is something you see with a lot of, especially people from sort of the new Hollywood era, not just in Hollywood, but also around the world, is these are people who they grew up with films. So they kind of already wanted to do it, and they also knew, okay, I'm going to have to get into the industry starting from the bottom. Someone, just as an aside, Roger Corman, who cranked out a whole bunch of low-budget B movies, many of which ended up on Mystery Science Theater 3000, gave a start to a lot of actors and directors, saying, "Hey, be an assistant director, be a DP, here, direct this cruddy movie." So this is how a lot of people, your Jonathan Demme's, your even people like Jack Nicholson, started out. He also, in this time, met his wife Marina. He married her in 1958. And he directed his first film in the late 50s, which is The Thieves, which is a crime comedy. So he actually got his start in comedies. He directed a few westerns. But in the late 60s, early 70s, he moved on to giallo films. So what are giallos? They're thrillers, mystery fiction. Think of them as akin to like pulp noir novels. They're murder mysteries and whatnot. And that's where he really found his voice / his niche. So he had movies like Lizard in a Woman's Skin, which great title, by the way. And there's actually one thing I should know about a lot of directors is if you were to look at his filmography, he just kept making movies. He made multiple movies a year. And this is something about the Italian film industry at the time. And this wasn't untrue for Hollywood as well, but Italian film industry was definitely a don't stop working, crank them out. The sooner they're cranked out, the sooner they go to the theaters, the sooner they make money, and if we're lucky, some of them go to the United States. 1972, he makes the film Don't Torture a Duckling, and this is a film about a detective investigating some child murders in a very insular village in Italy, and the residents are extremely superstitious and extremely distrusting of outsiders. It's also a commentary on the Catholic Church and not a flattering view of the Catholic Church, which, got him a lot of attention, both good. It got him attention as a filmmaker, but it got him unpopular attention. Obviously, in Italy, in the 70s, making a film critical of the Catholic Church, not the best idea. But I think that is something that shows him as a fairly fearless filmmaker. Also, Don't Torture a Duckling is important for one very important reason, which is why Fulci is very well known: the use of gore effects. Fun fact, just as long as we're talking about Italian cinema, he's very good films with Dario Argento, which, if you follow Italian horror cinema from the 70s, a real niche, you know him like director of Phenomena, Suspiria, the Three Mothers trilogy. So, on to 1979 with Zombie 2 and worldwide recognition. You very likely have seen, if you were in video stores, you saw the cover of a wormy zombie face with the tagline, "We are going to eat you." I remember seeing that cover when I was 10 years old and being both terrified and extremely interested in seeing that movie. This got, again, worldwide recognition. It was actually in Italy, touted as Dawn of the Dead 2, which, no, it's not. But the Italian film industry at the time really was based around ripoffs, or what movie is your movie the most like. This also gives us a fairly more nihilistic view of this zombie genre, kind of going back to George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. It takes place on like a remote island. It doesn't take place in the city too much. Has a great ending, although you can definitely tell the budgetary restrictions they had. One scene, it's supposed to show the zombies have overtaken New York City. They're crossing a bridge, and then below you can see cars just moving like it's, like it's a normal day. But hey, they're making movies for $5. What can you do? Also, Zombie 2 gave us a scene where a zombie fights a shark, which, bless Lucio Fulci forever. The 80s is when he got really big, and this is where he cemented his title as a horror master. So he gives us House by the Cemetery, The Beyond, City of the Living Dead, New York Ripper, which is a highly controversial movie, still edited in Britain, I believe. Definitely a video of the video nasty period. Also accused of misogyny, which I've seen a lot of his movies. He is not someone I would consider to be a misogynist, although he has said in interviews that misogyny is part of his life. And I think some of that goes back to he has had a lot of tragedy involving women in his life. I think the biggest thing was his wife died in 1969. She committed suicide. She learned she had inoperable cancer and didn't want to die slowly. And that was something that, according to his friends, weighed on him his entire life. And he also spoke of a third child that he had, a daughter that died violently in a car accident. There was actually no documentation of her, but again, Dario Argento has said that she did exist. She was very young. Maybe there wasn't proper documentation of her death, or there was, but he just didn't like to talk about it. So I think the fact that he had two women very close to him die fairly horribly, maybe that was something he was kind of getting out on screen. And he kind of talked about that. And as I would kind of say, I don't think Lucio Fulci hates women. I just think he wants everyone to die horribly. And he also doesn't want anyone to have eyes in their sockets. I love him, but his films are violent, but I will get to that. He still got out of the horror game sometimes. He made Conquest, which is sort of a Beastmaster type movie, and Contraband, which is a mafia crime film. Most of the time, he made very cheap horror films from the 80s almost into the 90s just to make ends meet. He had a lot of health problems in his life, and he died destitute in 1996. Before he died, Dario Argento helped him pay for his apartment, and when he died, he also paid for his funeral. So, nice story, but it is, for a man who had so much success professionally, he really had a life that was marked by a lot of human tragedy. And again, I think he likes to explore that in his films. His films are rarely have happy endings. They usually have nihilistic endings. Or, in the case of City of the Living Dead, that was a studio-enforced bad ending, but that's neither here nor there. Why is he important? Well, I would say, first of all, hardworking. You can't say the guy didn't work. And to the point where I think it affected his health, but a lot of people said he worked to distract from the fact that he wasn't well. He also helped popularize Italian horror along with Dario Argento and get it over to the US. As gory as the stuff is, people are like, oh my gosh, have you seen Zombie? You need to see X, Y, and Z scene for he was doing stuff that wasn't even done in America. And it was shocking, but again, helps popularize the genre here. Also, he was making original films when much of the Italian industry was making knockoffs. Granted, he followed trends, but he would at least try to make them his own story. The Beyond is a story that it looks like a zombie film, but it's actually more about past crimes and witchcraft and this idea that, someone can create a portal to hell in a hotel It's, I think, a far more metaphysical film than people give it credit for. And he always had his own style. And as I would say, he made gore artful. And Dario Argento does the same thing. I think when we think of gore, we think of it as lazy. We think of it as a way to just shock the audience. And yes, it can be. But for him, it is a stylistic and creative choice. And I should also note that if you look at classic paintings and even tapestries, gore has been a part of our art for forever. And I would say I would rather see someone, he wouldn't just have eyes gouged out. He would have a person fall off a ladder onto the floor and spiders slowly come and attack their eyes. Not a great thing. I always turn my eyes away from that personally. I do not like violence against eyes. But he's also someone who would take the gore and not just, he would turn up the tension. You would know what's coming, and actually you would be sort of waiting in anticipation for the final shoe to drop, so to speak. So to write him off as someone who just lazily throws gore into his movies is to completely discount his ability to build tension and create a scene and create suspense. Also, I would say he has very good cinematography, very good set design. I think The Beyond is a beautiful movie that has a lot of great shots in it, and I think he really wanted to make that more of an art film. Unfortunately, studio interference kind of got in the way, but I think it still works on its own merit. Um, so yeah, again, not a lot of people agree with me that gore can be artful, but I think there are examples of it, because even I will say, sometimes it's just lazy. I say this as someone who watches a lot of this stuff, but if you're going to do it, Lucio Fulci is someone who has raised the bar and say, like, okay, I'm going to go over there. I'm at least going to try to put some effort into it. Also, his movies are just a whole lot of fun if you are into the horror genre. So what would I recommend? Obviously, Zombie 2. I would recommend The Beyond. I would recommend City of the Living Dead. I would not recommend New York Ripper. That is not for everybody. I would also say go watch, if you can find it, Don't Torture a Duckling. That is far more of a socio-political movie. And I think it shows just how good he really was as a filmmaker. He definitely found his niche with horror, but I kind of wish he was able to make a few more films like Don't Torture a Duckling. Also, I do know that at least some of his movies are available on Amazon Prime, so check that out. And some of them are probably free and full on YouTube, and take full advantage of that. So thank you for watching this today, and I will see you tomorrow with What's on Netflix.